Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. The son of a world-famous photographer exposes how easy it is for online chat rooms to lure depressed young people into transgenderism, because it almost happened to him. Sasha Bailey is now 29 years old, and he's the son of photographer David Bailey. He's finally opening up about how 10 years ago he married a woman 20 years his senior and quickly found himself in a toxic relationship. Without going into details, Sasha claims his ex-wife was very mean and that the pair had moved to Japan together. That means he was without close support as he slipped further into a depressive episode and could not climb out of bed most days. It culminated in Sasha writing a suicide note as he contemplated taking his own life. Now, thankfully, by the grace of God, he changed his mind. However, he found comfort, though, in a dangerous part of the internet, online chat rooms. In these chat rooms, he was introduced to the idea of transitioning into a beautiful woman. That was the promise. Sasha tells the Daily Mail, quote, "Transitioning was a way of killing myself without dying because I was so unhappy with my life. I thought that if I could do this one thing, it could change everything. I could reinvent myself as an entirely new person. When I decided I was trans, I felt great because I felt I was moving towards a goal, towards something achievable. If I followed this path, took the hormones, did the surgery, then I would end up in the place I needed to be. When you were so lost, this is game-changing," end quote. And with this, he was able to receive a psychiatric diagnosis within 10 minutes of seeing a supposed professional. His new transgender ideology was rubber stamped, and Sasha now reflects on how his parents being so supportive of his transition was actually the worst thing they could have done, because there was no critical analysis of what underlying issues were actually at play, and that could have rendered him sterile if he had continued down that destructive path with everyone's full approval. Sasha tells reporters, quote, "It's almost like society has a gun to its head, because if they're not supportive of it, the only choice is to be canceled. You are either for it or you're transphobic. There is no middle ground," end quote. Thankfully, he didn't end up taking the hormones because of NHS red tape back in the UK that slowed down the process after his very initial quick diagnosis in Japan. That gave him the time to finally realize that this isn't what he truly wanted. He's now talking about his experiences after witnessing firsthand how easy it is for people much younger than even him to be experimented on medically, because the true source of their unwellness is going undiagnosed. Joining us now to discuss is Ian Howarth, the host of Off Limits with Ian Howarth. Ian, thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So how profound an insight is that when Sasha says that transitioning was a way for him to die without actually having to die? Because suicide is so bad for young people these days. Just look at the stats. I mean, no wonder so many opt for this route instead.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to the vulnerability that's at the center of the explosion of transgenderism. I think that we all agree that the issue of transgenderism or gender dysphoria does exist, but it's for a tiny percentage of the people who now claim to be a member of this so-called community. And what we're seeing is a lot of vulnerable people, especially a lot of vulnerable children, really being manipulated into what is the latest fad for the progressive left, just to push for more power over what gender is, over what sex is, and what identity is. And I think it's great that people like this are speaking out, because that's really how we see how dark and dangerous and insidious really what's going on here is. We don't hear about it. All we hear is the radical left telling us how wonderful it is, how that, increasingly younger children can just decide they're something else and be changed overnight, as if there's no consequences to that. So it's wonderful that we're seeing more reports like this. I just hope it'll snowball. I hope more people who've been victims of this speak out, and we can see this for the horror that it is.
I hope so as well, but one thing that really upset me, or concerned me, I guess maybe a better word, when I was reading his account, was this fear that he's doing a great job, right, and coming out and laying out very articulately, here I can't even say the word articulately, right, but explaining just how people like him, and like you're talking about, a lot of vulnerable young people can fall down into this. But what scares me, though, is how easy it is to be canceled and destroyed over. We see what happens to detransitioners. Now, of course, he didn't fully transition, so therefore he's not considered to be a detransitioner, but in some aspects he's kind of like them. And we see how they're treated. I mean, they are ground beneath the heel of the left, the LGBTQ movement. It's not even just that they ignore them, don't listen to them, mock them. No, like, they go after them. Even Chloe Cole, young people like that have their lives completely upended, reputations destroyed, mobs chasing them wherever they go.